hello everybody, and welcome to Inside D2Football, the first live show of the 2022 season. I am Brandon Meisner. I am the editor of D2Football.com, joined by Chuck Bittner, our national columnist, Matt Witwicky, our NSIC columnist, Devin Albertson, our MIAA columnist, and Chris Ferguson, our CIAA columnist. We are all set to talk about the 2022 season and the first week of the 2022 season, which is quickly approaching. So, guys, I don't know about you. Everybody says the season takes forever to get here. For me, it always gets here quickly because there's so much work to be done to prepare for the season. But nonetheless, glad to be here and glad to be talking about D2 football.
Yep, ready to go. I have a question before we start into top 25 and all that.
Yeah.
Ferg, how many stadiums have you visited since the end of last football season?
I don't even know. I've been to Assumption, Northwest, Simon Fraser, Central Washington. I haven't been to 50. I don't think I've been to 50 total. I've been to quite a few of them in the off season. It's been pretty amazing and interesting. I visited Witt. So I went to Sioux Falls and Augie, and that was a wonderful experience. Shout out to those coaches. So I've been to quite a few.
I think you probably got me beat on numbers. I did a lot in the Northeast since I'm back in Pennsylvania. I did all the Northeast 10 in about one day. Saw a bunch of FCS stadiums up there. Did the GLVC and MLAAA over the summer. Caught up on some Mountain East Conference. So it was a great summer of stadium touring. I know you got me beat on mileage, but it was fun to see some stadiums.
Not total though. Not total. I haven't been as many as you have, Chuck. I aspire to be like you.
Well, we'll talk about Mr. Moneybags trips later because you have to be rich to afford the gas and do all the travel that Chris engaged in. But hopefully last week or sometime this previous week, you've seen our preview of the 2022 season and you saw the top 25 poll. We're going to go over that again. And last year we spoke to the poll immediately after it was released. This year we waited a week, but this is the top 25 poll. The top 10 are Ferris State, Valdosta State, Colorado Mines, Northwest Missouri, Grand Valley, followed by Shepherd, West Florida, Angelo State, Harding, and West Georgia. Notre Dame's 11, then Bowie State, Nebraska Kearney. I know. Kutztown, Western Colorado, Bemidji State, Ouachita Baptist, New Haven, Newberry, and Albany State, and then Augustana, Lenoir-Rhyne, California, Slippery Rock, and Washburn. So, guys, let's talk about this and dissect a little bit. Not everybody votes in the poll. I think actually all you guys do, but not everybody who's usually on the show does. Nonetheless, it's okay to be critical of others. It's okay to be critical of ourselves. Let's jump in first. What teams let's start it there. What teams are not in the poll that possibly should have been in the poll?
Yeah, Brandon, my first thought when I saw this is when I had submitted my own polling, I had Southeastern Oklahoma in there just because of the fact that I thought that they were a team that was on the cusp of getting through, basically in the GLIAC. But, they beat Harding, they beat Ouachita Baptist, but they ended up losing games to teams like Henderson State, Oklahoma Baptist, and East Central, and they need to be able to beat teams, that they're supposed to. And I think that's why they probably just missed right here. And the other one that came to mind for me right away was UIndy. I think that they're a team that I would expect to take back over the GLVC with Lindenwood gone. And now if you also take a look at the fact that Toriano Clinton's returning and things like that, they've got a lot coming back on that offensive line. So I'm expecting them to be a top 20-ish team, frankly.
I'm with you on Southeastern Oklahoma State, Whit. I had them in my top 25, but I think you kind of alluded to, maybe one of the things that held them back in the eyes of some voters. They won some games that we didn't really expect them to. Actually, a lot of their wins were wins we didn't really expect them to get. They were a 1-10 team the year before. But they also lost a couple of games that we didn't really expect them to lose. And I think, Brandon's kind of said on this show before, respect is such an interesting thing in polls like this. It takes a long time to earn respect, but it also takes a long time to lose respect. And I think Southeastern's kind of in that part of the bell curve right now where they're trying to get to the top of it and earn that respect and that recognition. Is just not quite there yet, but I did have them in. UIndy, I didn't quite have in my top 25, but they were in my first 5 out. I do think that they're most likely to be the GLVC champ this year. I just don't think anybody else really has what it takes to contend with them. But a couple other teams that I was looking at that I potentially had in this top 25, Frostburg State, a 10-win team. Yeah, FSU, a 10-win team a year ago. I had them in as my number 25. And there are a couple teams out of the Lone Star that I think got a little bit overlooked. Midwestern State was actually the Lone Star Conference champion.
Sure.
I had them as a potential top 25, and actually West Texas A&M was a team I had in my top 25, because you have to take a few chances when you're doing these polls, right? It can't always be just a convention. You got to take a few chances. I took a chance on West Texas A&M because they had a great finish to the end of last season, and they actually beat Angelo in Midwestern State. So that was a team that I had in.
All right. Any of you other guys have teams that you feel probably should have been voted in or even would have been considered to be part of the top 25?
Yeah, I'll go jump in here. I thought Pitt State and the Washburn there at the 25, Washburn getting in over Pitt State. I kind of like Pitt State a little bit more this year than Washburn. I actually didn't have either one in my top 25 to start the year, but if I was going to put one in the top 25, I was going to put Pitt in before Washburn. I just like where they're heading a little more kind of known with them going this year with the quarterback change there. There for the MIAA kind of deal. That's where I was kind of looking at for that bottom of the top 25. They're both in that kind of 20 to 30 to 35 range where you can switch teams in and out. I just thought it was interesting that Washburn got the nod over Pitt State going into this year. I
agree with that. I did not have Washburn in my top 25. I looked at Pitt and I considered them, but I did not have either of those teams in my top 25. A couple in the chat. I'll mention one, and then I want to see if Chris has an opinion. Calvin mentioned Fayetteville State and Bentley. Bentley was close. I looked at them. Interestingly enough, the coaches didn't really think that highly of Bentley. I think they were ranked 3rd in the coaches poll in the Northeast 10. And Paul Followitz, who of course is the person I would trust the most in the Northeast 10, had them in 4th position in his preseason poll. So I'm not surprised that Bentley didn't make it. Ferg, do you have an opinion on Fayetteville State? Would they be really, really close to a top 25?
No. Fayetteville State can't even win a game outside of the conference, like outside of just the HBCU world. And that's something I actually kind of talked about in my column that I'm hoping to drop pretty soon. But they got some games that they could certainly prove themselves. I mean, UNC Pembroke out the gate, they've never beat them. And then Wingate week 2. So if they can win those games, then yes, I would certainly put them in my top 25. But until then, they're not a consideration for me.
One thing that you guys talked about, or at least I think that we failed to consider in our discussion now, is people are talking about Frostburg. People mentioned Bentley. Frostburg lost a coach and lost a lot of players. There's a lot of turnover in that situation. So I think if they had maintained the status quo, they probably – because I believe they were on the edge last year of making our poll at the end of the year. And Bentley lost a lot too. So I think that's why, as you said, they were only voted 3rd in the Northeast 10 itself. And so I think that's probably a reason why they're not in the top 25, or at least why somebody would justify not putting them in the top 25. So let's go a little bit more in depth. Let's put this back up, or I'm going to put it back up. Who is too high? Who is too low? Let's go with who is too high for. No, let's do too low because we want to end on a negative. So let's go. Who is too low?
I have Ouachita a few spots higher than 17. I think I had them. I don't have my personal poll ahead of me. I think I had Ouachita maybe 12 or 13.
I had them 14 in mine.
I had them a little bit higher. I had Bemidji a few spots lower, and I actually had Augustana a few spots higher. I know that I talked with Whit in the off season, and we were looking at just those teams. And I think what your thought to me was that Bemidji's the better team right now. I actually went with Augustana because I really, really like their defense, and I think defense travels, and I think defense is what you need in late in the season. So I actually had Augustana a few spots higher.
Chuck, you bring up a good point with Augustana. At that point in time, there was a lot of uncertainty as to what they were going to do at quarterback. And now with, having Bauman come in from Montana State and 6'6" guy, 230 athletic, who could really be a difference maker for him. I think that gives them a bit of a shot in the arm. And now looking at it, I would probably have Augustana up a little bit higher, armed with that information. When I look at this grouping here, I'm not quite that high on Western Colorado. I would still have them in the list. I just wouldn't have them quite up that high. And like you, Chuck, I did like Ouachita Baptist as well.
Real quick, what did you think of the difference between Bemidji and Augustana versus a team that did make the poll in Duluth? The gap between those three teams.
Yeah, Duluth, I think the big challenge is the last few times they've made the postseason. They've had a pretty unfavorable result, and like we saw this last year, they weren't really in their football game very long at Angelo State in the playoffs. And they lost to Commerce a few seasons before that when they were in the playoffs. And I think that's some of that maybe starting to stick with the voters a little bit, not having the postseason success that they've had back more towards the glory years they had. When they were, hoisting a national championship in times similar to that.
California is another team that I thought was maybe a few spots too low. I had them ranked up a little bit higher. I think that they're going to be a surprise team in Super Region 1 this year.
All right, let's flip the script then. And it's time to be critical. Who is ranked too high in the poll?
Brandon, my thought is that a lot of times when this polling is done, there's kind of two schools of thought with it. You can go ahead and kind of use the answers from the previous season, which is kind of the order of finish there. But at the same time, I like to kind of look at this with a little bit of a different take in that maybe we should, kind of dig in deeper as to who's coming back, who's not, and maybe the order of finish isn't quite as important and things of that sort. So one of the teams that really stands out to me because of the amount of player movement they had, for me, is Bowie State. I just think that between the player movement, coaches heading on out and so forth, I think it's going to be really hard for them to be able to maintain what they really cooked up last year. Ferg, I know that's your conference. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't disagree there. I didn't have them at 12. I had them lower in the polls because of that. I mean, this is a team that lost so much. They lost the head coach, lost both coordinators. They lost the starting quarterback, graduated, starting running back graduated. And then you had a bunch of transfers when Coach Wilson left. And so, I know that they're, very proud and they have some returning pieces. There's a really big question at quarterback and running back. So Bowie State is not about the defense. The defense is going to be fine. It's where are they going to find the offense to keep pace against the first two games of the season in New Haven and Saginaw. So that's the issue I see there. And I think, 12 is generous.
I kind of thought so too. And to be clear, at the end of last season, I think all of us were very high on Bowie State heading into 2022.
Right.
Whit, I think you had them as your number 5 in our way too early top 5 rankings in our season ending show. And I had them easily in my top 10. But just looking at what they have to try to recover from with all the losses in the coaching staff and the roster, I agree that 12 is a little generous. I think it's also just a show of respect for the program and the quality and the depth that they have there.
What do you guys think about Mines being over Northwest, Grand Valley, and Shepherd and that kind of trio? I had them in my top 6, 7 still. What do you think about them being at 3 instead of where they're kind of at there?
Mines is better than Northwest.
I had Mines at number 2.
I did as well, actually. I think mine's is bringing back just about everybody. They
They
have
are.
they have a change at the head coach, but basically they take their DC, promote them up. So there's not going to be any real changes there. I think Northwest is at risk for not being as good as they have been. I just think with some of the key losses they've had on both sides of the football, they got to look to find to give somebody the football as much as they were able to rely on last year. So it's one of those things where I'm not sure that Mines isn't just fine where they're at. I mean, I realize they could still lose at Grand Valley, but you know what? Good portion, if not almost everybody here, does lose at Grand Valley. So I'm not sure that tells you a lot, unless it's a just completely one-sided football game. And I really don't see that.
Yep, I agree.
All right.
Same.
All right. Very good. So we agree that, or at least I think we're higher on Mines than a lot of people as a group, and we voted it that way. And probably higher on Ouachita, Bemidji, and Augie. Is that what we thought? We thought that would be better. Okay. Very good. All right. That's enough top 25 talk. Let's start talking about the 2022 season. There's some changes that have been made. And I think the most interesting one is the Lone Star Conference. And I've made this joke several times, so bear with me if you've heard it amongst our group. But the Lone Star Conference now has schools from Texas, New Mexico, Oregon, Washington, and Canada. And and it'll be covered by us. By a guy who's from the Northeast and now lives in Pennsylvania. So I just think that's crazy, but nonetheless, that is an incredibly interesting conference to me. That is more like a conference you would see at the BCS level with that kind of geography, sincerely Canada to Texas. And it's not like it's bad teams. You did lose Commerce, but you brought in Central Washington, who's a good team, and they're a playoff team last year, and it makes for an extremely interesting conference this year because it's new teams and new matchups. Anybody disagree?
Well, a couple things about that. First of all, I'm happy for everybody involved because of the stability that it gives them. We have a couple of conferences in D2 that are really, really challenged to pull a 10-game schedule together. It's gotten really difficult for some of these conferences. So it gives them the stability that they really need in both the schools in Texas and the schools in the Pacific Northwest, especially those GLIAC schools that had to play each other twice a year just to get half a schedule put together. So that's a great thing. I think the biggest variable and the thing that's going to be most interesting to watch is Central Washington, because they've been a quality program for a very long time. They've kind of been the class of the GNAC, and now having the opportunity to compete regularly against the Lone Star. They have history against the Lone Star. They actually played Midwestern and Angelo last year. They beat Midwestern, and Angelo was, I think, a 4 or 5 point game, very, very low scoring. So we already know that they can compete with those schools. It's going to be really fun to see how they do week in and week out playing those Lone Star Conference schools.
Yeah, you could tell on media day, Chuck, when they were for the Lone Star, everyone seemed to be very pleased with this agreement because it was going to make everyone's life easier. And I agree with you. I think Central Washington is definitely one of those teams to look for because last few years you really haven't known how good are they because of the fact that what the schedule they've kind of been forced to play. Now they're going to have more of a known quantity with their schedule. I'm really interested to see how that works out.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate. I think Simon Fraser announced that they actually are playing most of their home games in Washington State because there's still some border restrictions. So it's kind of unfortunate that the Lone Star schools don't actually get that opportunity to go up and play a game in Canada, which would have been a really cool thing for them. But yeah, it's a great situation for all involved.
The thing about that I often cite when discussing with people, administrators, et cetera, about the importance of non-conference play in Division II. And, people probably don't want to hear it, but it's part of the educational experience. A lot of kids get to travel and go places they might never have been or never will go, or they might get on a plane for the first time. And that, as you said, Chuck, it's unfortunate for kids from Texas and New Mexico or from wherever that might have been able to go to Canada for the first time, and they're going to miss out on that experience. But nonetheless, it's an exciting conference. It makes it very interesting, and obviously, it's a group of teams trying to make the best of a not perfect situation, and they've done a great job in doing that. Another conference that has had a little bit of change this year is the South Atlantic Conference. So Emory and Henry is reclassifying, is now a full member of the South Atlantic Conference, and then Barton and Erskine are associates. And so the conference is large enough that they have divisions. And at one time, the South Atlantic was one of the smallest conferences in the country, and now they're one of the bigger conferences in Division II.
Yeah, I wrote about this in my preseason column where I kind of just did, an overview of every conference. For a long time, the SAC was the smallest league in D2. It was pretty consistent at 8 teams. Actually went down to 7 for a little while. So it's really good for those teams, again, to have the stability. They do still play out-of-conference games in the SAC, which is really good and really important. Mm-hmm. We really value those. But it gives them a lot more of ability to make sure that every team has a full schedule, because they're going to have the consistency of their divisional schedule, and then they'll have the pre-scheduled crossover games as well, with a couple open weeks for out of conference. And those out of conference weeks are great because that's when we see them play Gulf South teams and they play CIAA teams, and that's where we really kind of start to be able to form strong opinions about who has what when we get down to the playoffs. But it's a good thing for the SAC. I think the divisions will be interesting. The only downside is that, and it's tough to account for this when you form divisions in football, because typically you do that geographically. You can't plan to form your divisions competitively and say, well, we're going to take these 3 teams because they're really good and pair them with these 3 teams that aren't as good, and then we'll take another 3 teams. You just can't really do it that way because it can change from year to year. Agreed. So the result is in the SAC right now, you have one division that's really kind of imbalanced, because you've got Lenoir-Rhyne, Wingate, Newberry, and now you can even throw Barton into that mix, all in the same division. The other one, it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out on top in that, because you've got Mars Hill, Tusculum, Limestone, Carson Newman. I have no idea what the result of that will be, but right. I think that what really the situation is, you're probably going to have the 3 or maybe even 4 best teams in that league in one division, which is kind of one of the reasons a lot of D1 conferences have moving away from divisional formats.
Yep.
Well, I just want to point out, since we're talking about out of conference, I don't know if y'all seen this, but the MIAA commissioner posted the Massey ratings and was kind of talking about how highly rated the MIAA was, and really to only rate them is playoff performance, because they have that insulated schedule, the same with the GAC. So I think, the CIAA moved to 2 out-of-conference games, but they're still preserving that. And I think, conferences like the SAC and the Gulf South have benefited from that in particular, because there's a lot of crossover matchups with those other 2 conferences. And it's a great way to kind of, even coaches like playing some of the higher level teams in other conferences, whereas you don't really get that in the middle of the country anymore.
Yeah, I think Brandon and I are on the record very heavily against the MIAA with their only silo scheduling, and I think the MIAA is one of the best conference, but it'd be nice if they could prove on the field in the regular season, year in, year out, and be able to flex your muscles that way instead of looking at I'm a big numbers guy too. I like using Massey as well, but it's just more fungible to be able to point in the field, our conference went 9-2 out of conference this year, whatever it is, instead of just looking at Massey ratings. So I wish they get away from the silo scheduling. I think it would help the Northern Sun Conference get with some scheduling. It would help the GLIAC as well, but I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon. So, yeah.
It will change, and the most important thing is it's more fun for everybody.
Yes.
And this is a topic that I've really changed my mind about. Not that we need non-conference schedule, but why, and about who I really care, and what I mean by that, or whose opinion I care about. And what I mean by that is I care about the people who are going to be rooting for these schools for the long haul. So I care for an alumnus who's going to go back to their games. What's fun for them? I care about a coach that basically has no goal to move on that you think is going to coach at a school forever. You know, if somebody's going to move on in 2 years to get another job at a higher level, their opinion is less important to me. Their difficulties are less important to me than they once were. I kind of feel like that, you know, this is a group of people in here who are in this for the long haul. Not necessarily this show, not necessarily D2Football.com, but who are in D2 watching our teams for the long haul. And I feel that it's more important and respect our opinion and the opinion of people like us more than I do the opinion of administrators or whatever. And so I think that, you know, I've really thought about this a lot in the off season, and, you know, people need to make their opinions felt in terms of scheduling what's fun for them, game times what's fun for them. Does your school only do day games because that's what the grumpy old coach wants? Or does your school do some night games too? You know, whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong. Day games may be what your alumni base wants, and that's cool then too. And that's what you should do. That's right. But it can't just be about what's convenient and what's easiest for 5 administrators at a school or 5 grumpy people at a school or whatever.
I think that's really the thing, Brandon. And sorry, I'm just jumping.
No.
That's really the
Go
thing
ahead.
because I've kind of had these conversations with some people around some of the leagues that I've covered. Not the SAC, because the SAC historically has needed out of conference games, but some other conferences that don't necessarily need those out of conference games. They kind of like minimizing the out of conference to a week. And in some cases, the leagues that don't have it at all, honestly, it's because it makes it easy.
Right.
They just the league office gives them a schedule, and they don't have to make phone calls. They don't have to chase down opponents. They don't have to try to work out guarantees or contracts or travel arrangements. It's easy. And I get it. You know, it's the people that run a D2 athletics department have so much to do with a fraction of the resources of a D1 institution. I get that. But really, you know, you have to think about the student athlete experience. Mm-hmm. And part of that student athlete experience is going to places that they haven't been to before, seeing opponents that they haven't been to before. You know, that's a big part of it. So embrace that, and, you know, embrace the grind of trying to get those games and go outside your conference, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think the same way. When you talked about the student experience, there are many times that students have not traveled to other parts of the country in order to see what they have to offer and take in, you know, just a totally different view. And I know that, like, the CIAA has sort of branched out a little bit more. They're playing 2 Great Lakes schools in Michigan this year. Same week.
Fun games. Those are fun matchups.
Oh yeah, and I just think that, you know, having those opportunities. So some of these people have never traveled outside the state. Some folks have not flown before. I mean, to me, that's really what college is all about. And when you're looking at restricting those opportunities, you know, who does it really hurt in the end? Right. I mean, I understand some of it's budget. I get it. But some of it really, I don't think is. So that's kind of my issue there.
Right. It's human nature to want everything to be easy. That is human nature. It just, at some point, when we are, and I say we as in people who care about college athletics, whatever, sports fans, we are fighting for interest and eyeballs. And it's not 1950 anymore, where the coach says we're going to play at noon so that I can, you know, do my same schedule every week, et cetera, and not to blame this all on the coaches, and maybe hardly any of it's on the coaches. I don't know. All I'm saying is, if you want people to be interested in your sport, if you want people to come to your games, if you want people to donate money to your program, you have to do things that make them interested. And sometimes that's not the easiest thing for you to do.
I can tell you, because I know a lot of people at Lenoir-Rhyne, they're going to publicize the hell out of the fact that they're playing the defending national champions next week.
For them.
And they will get a lot of mileage out of that. Probably have a packed house. And I mean, who wouldn't be excited about that? Like, if you're a Lenoir-Rhyne alumnus, you know, you've got a good football program, you've got a rebuilt stadium, you've got a lot of things to like about that program, why you want to support it anyway. And now you have the defending national champions coming in to play a game in your house. Man, it can't get better than that. So, go out and make these games happen.
All right. Well, thanks for, and I'll step down off my soapbox now, guys. But thanks for letting me get up on there. One last conference. All right. The GMAC Northwood has moved to the GMAC and will be part of that conference this year. They were in the GLIAC.
Oh, what's left of the GLIAC?
So
what's left?
17. Bare bones.
So that's
at one point that was the largest, or it was up there. Tony just dropped his GLIAC season preview. Out there on the website. By the way, go read that. It's awesome.
Of course
Tony hasn't missed a beat in 10 years. So go read Tony's column. It's fantastic. He talked about that the last time he wrote for the site. The GLIAC was at 16 teams, and now it's down to 7. So I worry about that.
Okay, let's. It's time. Yes.
Another soapbox.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Just because you have a lot of teams doesn't mean your conference is good.
Right.
All it means is scheduling stability. All right. A lot of the teams that weren't as good, a lot of the bad teams are gone now, and they formed a new conference. That conference,
and they're all better off that way. Actually, a lot of those teams are better off that way. But yeah, I get you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. They're running from Grand Valley and they're running now from Ferris State. Every team that had played in a national championship or won one is still in the GLIAC. It's not the top that are leaving or have left. It's the ones
it's the filler.
It's the ones that the middle of the pack to the bottom of the pack that have left. And so the GLIAC probably, if you take the schedule, might be tougher than ever. It's just harder on them than ever. They're having to take games from across the country, which is one of the reasons. It's because of the MIAA, the Northern Sun, and the GAC having the insular schedules. That's one of the reasons that the GLIAC has tough.
Domino effect.
It's the same as the Gulf South. I mean, that's what happens to the Gulf South too.
Yep.
Right. So, in any case, let's move on. Lots of Chuck and I. This is something that we kind of talked about all year long, and we actually kept a list.
Literally.
Yes, we did keep a list of. At one time, it was 32. Was that right, Chuck? Did it ever get over 32?
That sounds about right. It's over 30.
Okay.
There might have been a few in there that were technically interim coaches last year that are now full time, but it was a lot of coaching movement.
No, I don't think we've ever said, like I actually said it, but there are over 30 new coaches in Division II this year. So 30 programs have a new head guy. What is the most interesting new coach for each of you guys? I don't think we were prepared to answer that question.
I'll take that first then. I'll go first then.
I've got a couple, but you go ahead first.
Go ahead, Chris.
So I'll approach this from the HBCU angle. And the most interesting move in that space was Maurice Flowers, who moved from Fort Valley State to John C. Smith. And he was he's a JCSU alum. But it was kind of unusual to see that kind of happen where he was at Fort Valley, who has more of a football tradition. And he actually had a winning record and had brought some players over, like Emmanuel Wilson, who was like a really high-level CIAA player who went to Fort Valley. And then all of a sudden they flipped roles in a way. And he took the quarterback from Fort Valley to go to John C. Smith too. I think that was just really, really, really interesting to see that. He's now at a school that I know he wants to win, but, there's a lot of work that has to be done at a program like that, and you certainly have to respect the passion about it.
I thought so too, Chris. I mean, I get why he makes that move. He's a Charlotte native. He went to school there. I think he coached high school in Charlotte. So I get why that makes a lot of sense for him. But competitively, Fort Valley State and Johnson C. Smith are in very different places right now. So, I mean, I think it's exciting for the CIAA. I'm excited to see what he can do there. I think it should be a place that a coach should be able to at least get to 500 at Johnson C. Smith. I'm going to stay in the HBCU landscape. The change at Tuskegee was very, very interesting to me. I thought Willie Slater would end up retiring at Tuskegee whenever his time came. The way that change came about really kind of surprised a lot of people. There was never really a formal announcement that Slater had been fired or was leaving or wasn't going to be back. They just announced that they had hired Reginald Ruffin from Miles. Now, if you don't know the SIAC very well, Miles is really kind of, right now, at least the big rival for Tuskegee. And Ruffin had been at Tuskegee as an assistant before. But it was just really interesting the way that happened, the way that went down. Whit, do you remember what you said to me about that when we talked about it in the off season?
I don't recall.
Well, you are very old, so I'm not surprised that you don't remember.
I did just turn 50 the other day. Of course, look more 30, but carry on.
Well, what you said to me was, you know what this is like? It would be like if Grand Valley went and hired Tony Anise.
4 score and 30.
It's almost like that. So that was a really interesting change, just the way it came about and how that came together. So really interesting one.
I think another interesting change was Valdosta State.
Oh, I think that's the most interesting one.
Yeah,
I mean that's the most interesting one.
Yeah. Gary Goff leaves like right after the national championship game, and then you wait, and then bam, look who it is. Right. It's Tremaine Jackson. So, I think that him showing up after, kind of like what we talked about with Mo Flowers, you get a season in as a head coach, and then you end up going somewhere else when the opportunity arises. The same thing happened with Tremaine Jackson with Colorado Mesa. Was a bubble team almost in the playoffs, and then, getting this opportunity at Valdosta is huge. And I think it's really good for the school. I think it's good for him. And I'm really curious to see how in the CIAA, how our arch nemesis performs now.
How about a 3-time national champion coming back to Division II football?
Doral back to UCO is very interesting there to see kind of many people in the MIAA think it's kind of a sleeping giant with the resources they have down there. If they can ever kind of figure everything out and get everything aligned at once.
Well, Devin, that's a little bit of a wives' tale. They have good, really? They have good facilities, but the resources do not equal facilities all the time. So they have some work to be done there. So it's just like everybody thinking that everything's always, the grass is always greener, and just because somebody has a pretty house doesn't mean it's paid for, or a nice car doesn't mean it's paid for. So in any case, UCO has as nice facilities as anybody, but they're budgetary. They're still working on some stuff. So
they have the bells and whistles to recruit well.
Yes.
Do they have the structure to win with that recruiting?
There you go.
Is probably the question there with UCO.
I think that's a better narrative. Yeah.
And if anybody can do that, I think it's Doral could do that in the day to day. The way I saw him work in Maryville, the way he grinds there, I think he could get the most out of. If there are any issues like that, he could develop. If he gets decent recruits in there, I think he can be fine on that part of it. It might take a year or two. I'm not sure where they're at right now. But it's definitely a team I'm looking at in the future there in the MIAA.
Devin, who can make more of an immediate impact here in the MIAA? Is it Doral at Central Oklahoma, or does Josh Lamberson at Central Missouri have a better situation to make more of an immediate impact?
I would go with Doral at UCO. I think UCM is kind of a mess right now. Last year was really rough for the Mules, especially defensively. It was real rough for Central Missouri last year there, and they were just kind of in limbo most of last year. So Sabota had a good run there at UCM, but the wheels kind of fell off there the last year, though. And, I mean, Lamberson, he struggled a lot there at Kearney when he first took over there as well, and he left with Doral down to Abilene Christian to be his OC down there. So I'm still 50-50 on Central Missouri. I'm not very high on them this year. I'm much higher on Central Oklahoma to possibly jump at the top half of the conference than I would Central Missouri this year.
All right, interesting.
Ferg, let me ask you, we take a look at some of the high-profile openings that came up. We take a look at our top 5. You've got Colorado Mines there, and you've got Valdosta, both who end up going from a white coach to an African-American coach. It's got to be really encouraging to see that 2 of those high-profile positions in our world, we're not afraid to go ahead and hire a black candidate at that point.
Yeah, I actually talk about a little bit of that in my upcoming column, where now you're starting to see, if you think about this from just the global landscape, a lot of us are in positions at work where there's just a lot of turnover, a lot of retirements, and that's also happening in the coaching world. And so now you're having to really think outside the box. There may not be a candidate that you may feel the most comfortable with, for example, that looks like you, but you may have a candidate that on paper looks really, really strong. And now you're getting that person in the door to take these high level positions. I mean, a lot of times, African-American coach is either a coordinator for a very long time, or they're having to come to the HBCU ranks to get a head coaching job, which has its own challenges. And now you're seeing, it's more than just an Adams State. It's more than just Fort Lewis. Now you're seeing those in much higher profile opportunities. So, and and a lot of kids, there's a great number of kids that are African American that are on these football teams. So why not have somebody that looks like them lead them?
Well, but I mean, like Colorado Mines had 2 black players when they brought on their coach, and I think it's just very encouraging that's what we're moving to.
Yeah, Mines is just really interesting. I agree with that. Mines is just because of the fact that they are an engineering school, and it's hard to recruit, harder to recruit people of color to go into those STEM schools. So to see that happen is just so refreshing.
And it's
Bentley as well. I would put Bentley in there as well. They had a very unexpected opening, in my opinion, at Bentley. I thought Brett Kavanaugh was probably going to be a lifer at Bentley. He had done well there. He was an alumnus. He actually left very late in the coaching carousel cycle. And Bentley also hired. He was an assistant on staff. Bentley also hired an African American coach, and I think he's going to do very well there. You can win at Bentley. It's they're not going to win a national championship, but you can contend in the Northeast 10. I think he's going to do really well there.
All right, let's go ahead, guys, and focus on one more big picture item before we'll move and focus on week 1. This is not like a pick 'em, but let's discuss who each of us thinks will get out of the region, each region, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then who might be the national champion. So looking at Super Region 1, who is everyone's candidate to get out of that region?
I mean, it's Shepherd, right? With the star quarterback. I'm just throwing it out there. It's probably my favorite.
Oh, you took the bait, Devin. You took the bait.
Yep, I'll be the simple one. That's fine. Someone school me here. Why am I wrong?
If you are wrong, it will be because of an incredible amount of turnover on defense.
Yeah, we are going to look back at these at the end of the year, right? Just to kind of like me winning the pick'em last year. I don't like to toot my horn, but
did you win it?
I don't know, but in my mind, I did.
Yeah, but in your mind, you're 30, so we need to verify this.
Ferg, don't laugh so hard. It's not quite that funny.
Chris, Devin, you guys both going with Shepherd in Super Region 1?
No, Kutztown.
No?
Okay.
Kutztown. Okay. All right. I can see that. I'm actually going to go in a little bit of a different direction. I'm going to go California. I think they're a little bit overlooked. They kind of got snubbed a little bit in the playoffs. I understood why that happened. I very much understood that. But they were a 9-1 team with a close loss to Slippery Rock. It was just unfortunate that they didn't make the playoffs. But they were definitely good enough to be there. They have one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the country with Noah Mitchell. I think Gary Dunn, the head coach, is very much like Jim Clements at Kutztown, just does an outstanding job. Not really talked about a whole much around the region, but a really, really great coach. He's done a phenomenal job there. So I'm going with California as a mild upset in Super Region 1.
Now, Chuck, you're only feeding into the idea that Chuck hates Notre Dame. So
I was going to ask about Notre Dame.
We'll just leave that out there, Chuck, since you've apparently dangled that.
I have I've been accused of that, but yeah.
Is that true? Is that really true?
No, there's
yes.
It's a whole website
I've
devoted to this.
I've only been stumping for the Mountain East Conference since day one when it was founded. I've only been talking up Notre Dame football since they really became, a national brand. But yeah, I apparently I hate them.
Chuck's been seeing some social media pushback.
That's
Brandon,
hilarious.
Now, Brandon, are you gonna get in with a pick here before I give the answer?
I thought I was gonna pick Notre Dame.
Okay, well, because no one's done that yet, and you would have thought between this many guys, someone would have. Now, that's a good guess, Brandon. Mm-hmm. But the answer is actually New Haven.
Okay.
New Haven had a real good thing going last year. They bring their quarterback back. I'm just telling you, they might be undefeated. Have people come playing at them. If New Haven's the team, you heard it here first.
I usually feel like people who say you heard it here first just said nothing worth saying. I'm not saying you're wrong, but
always something in here. Always something.
That's usually what I believe. Okay, let's look at Super Region 2, guys. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Yes.
Valdosta State is one that I cannot avoid here. Ferg, you're having a reaction to this apparently. Oh, that's right. They've just beaten all of your teams. Okay.
The boogeyman.
I know. No, so I just, of course, Tremaine's my guy, but at the same point, I just think that they are preparing themselves to make a real good run here. And I think it's going to be a very tough conference. Very interested to see what West Florida has. And I think their demise may be a little over-exaggerated. We'll see. So a lot of people are kind of falling off with Austin Reed, moving away. So that's who I have. I have Valdosta. Chuck, how do you see it? Do you also have Valdosta?
I do not. Certainly will not surprise me. They're a good pick. Probably the safest pick to make in Super Region 2. I'm going to go with West Florida. I think Pete Shinnick is going to have a really good team again. They have a lot of transfers that have come in. There's more than 24 guys on that roster that spent time in Division I institutions, and Pete Shinnick has already shown us that he can take a group of guys that come in from other schools and really, really quickly put a team together and get them to gel and play comfortably. I think that they have a couple of options at quarterback. As Shinnick's already said, he's kind of leaning one direction. Obviously, a lot depends on that, but I'm going with West Florida in Super Region 2.
They already made a choice, actually, Chuck.
Did they announce that? Okay, I know he was leaning in a direction. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to take West Florida.
Okay.
I don't disagree with the Valdosta pick. I just think that they have too many options to not be the favorite right now.
Yeah, I'm thinking Valdosta. I think West Georgia is a nice little choice here too. If you want to throw the hat in the ring kind of deal, could possibly the Gulf South should be so tough that any of those three teams, they're both West teams, and Valdosta State could have a chance to get out of the region.
I'm going to go clean out my mouth now.
Brandon, what do you have?
I think Valdosta State's going to win the national championship. So I would have to.
You heard it here first.
Well, I want to make sure I was the first one to say it. But so that's why I think they'll get out of Super Region 2.
Nicely done, Devin.
But last year I picked West Florida to win it all, and they lost in the first round. So good luck, Blazers.
Kiss of death to Valdosta State.
That's right. Let's go look at Super Region 3 then, guys. What are we thinking? Ferris State has owned the region for 3 years in a row. Is there any reason to think they won't do it again?
I'm gonna go with Grand Valley.
Okay.
Ferris.
I'm going with Grand Valley as well. I think Ferris gets them in the first outing, and I think Grand Valley gets them in the second one when the playoffs roll around.
But that game would likely be at Ferris if that happened that way.
Doesn't bother me. I think that they're not going to have a whiteout this year with all the snow and everything else, and I think they're going to
We'll
be
see.
Wow, look at Whit predicting weather months ahead.
Farmer's Almanac over here and the whole deal.
There will be no snow in Michigan in December. Whit's calling it.
It's Whit Wiki's on that.
Really safe forecasting there, Whit.
Yeah, it's going to be 50 degrees that day.
That'll be enough. Ferg, you're up.
Ferris. I mean, Ferris's style is just so hard to defend, and when you've got so much depth at quarterback that now, Bernhardt is gone. Before him, you had Campbell, and you're going to have somebody else step up that has run, the offense before. They're not missing a beat here, so I still think that they're the prohibitive favorite.
Yeah, it's Ferris until proven otherwise for me in this region.
Yeah.
All right.
That hurt to say, by the way, but yeah.
Yeah. The Ferris State has owned the MIAA for a while now. Three-time defending MIAA champs, right? All right.
They're only out of conference.
I guess
them, yeah.
I guess that's why they don't play out of conference games.
So I avoid the GLIAC out of conference at least. They were going to do it. So.
All right, Super Region 4. I think we could have a little bit more diversity in terms of the answers in Super Region 4. Who wants to go first?
Homer pick.
Okay, go ahead.
Go with West Texas.
West WT out of the blue. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they got to be in it though.
I don't know. WT is an interesting pick because we talked about this earlier with top 25, and the defense is there, the offense is just inconsistent.
Yeah.
So when you look at when they played Mines, for example, Mines was in a dogfight.
Yep.
With WT. So if they can just piece enough offense to kind of get over the hump, they're actually a bit of a threat.
I don't know that I have confidence in them winning the region, but I do think that they're going to be a top 25 team and a formidable threat. I actually have Angelo State coming out of that region.
I was going to try to do shock value and say Angelo State, and they'll call Mines as the favorite, but Chuck took my win there. But yeah, I'll go with Angelo as well.
I'm also going as with Angelo as well. I actually had it between Angelo and Augustana. I think that the challenge that Mines has is they've got such a tough schedule to begin that it kind of puts them at risk a bit. Brandon, what are your thoughts for the region?
Well, I would have picked Mines. I think I still would pick them in that situation, but I'm actually I'd be more willing to pick Augustana than I would Angelo. And I know that seems counterintuitive because Angelo has a lot coming back, quarterback, two impact running backs. But it's more of a gut feeling with Augustana. I feel
they bring back a ton also, Brandon.
Yeah. And I feel like the addition to that quarterback, Bauman, who was already a starter, although he lost the job, but he's already a starter at a very good FCS school. Now, that doesn't always mean something. It does not always mean something, but I think he has a unique physical set of tools. And I think that Augie could be the team that would surprise everybody the way Chris thinks West Texas would surprise everybody. So
gotcha.
I'd still go with Mines, but Augie would be the team that I would think would be number 2. I already picked my national champion. I said I think Valdosta's going to win it. Who's everybody else have?
Who are they beating, Brandon, in the title game?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's so hard. What would you pick? I'd pick somebody out of Super Region 3 because it's been 2 and 3 for a while, right?
Yes, you got Valdosta over Ferris.
Probably. Who knows?
Or Grand Valley. I'll take.
Oh my God, that would be fun. Let's pick Valdosta and Grand Valley just to wish that into fruition because that would be a fun championship.
That's actually what I have. Right. I have Valdosta winning that.
Do you really?
Uh-huh.
Okay, very good. Well, let's go with what Whit wants.
I have Grand Valley winning it.
Awesome.
I'm kind of going all in with Grand Valley this year. So it's been a while. I don't think they've won it all since 2006.
Well, they've got it. They've
been there since 2009. So
they have a really good team this year. I mean, we're talking about these teams with everybody returning. And I talked about it with Tony Nicolette on our preview show. But Grand Valley had a road trip where 2/3 of their team was freshmen and sophomores, and they went and won. And that's got to be paying off right now. When and it could really pay off next year too. But they've got a quarterback back, and elite 100 linebacker back. They just and this is something I said about Kutztown under 2. Grand Valley had a really good year with a lot of young players last year, and only had one player that made the elite 100 team.
Right.
That is a sign of a team that could really take a step and be great because they didn't rely on one thing. And so that's not a bad pick, Chuck.
Is anyone in the group taking Ferris to repeat?
I hate it, but I am.
Okay.
I got Ferris over Valdosta, same championship game too.
Huh.
That's exciting. Okay. Ferg, what do you have?
Valdosta.
And who do you have them? Who do you have them winning over?
Ferris.
Okay.
Huh. Okay. Which means it's going to be Angelo State versus New Haven in the national championship because we're all so sure.
This is there for everybody.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to 2022's week 1, which is this week. Lots of interesting games. Only one game out of all of these involves teams that do not play non-conference games. So take that as a hint. to the MIAA, GAC, and NSIC. We're going to talk first about what we call the undercard. And, in any other year, this would be the top billing. But there's lots of good games in this. Let's look first. Central Washington at Ferris State. Obviously, we're all very high on Ferris. Central Washington was a playoff team last year. Does anybody have Central Washington pulling the upset?
So I watched Central Washington last year. They had a lot of young guys. They're still a step away from being able to compete with a team like Ferris and teams like Grand Valley and stuff like that. So I think Ferris still takes care of this one. But this might be a good game for Central Washington to grow and be better for it in 2 or 3 weeks to face that talent and get ready for their Lone Star Conference schedule.
If you really think about that, viewing the world through a Central Washington lens, they will have been on the road and played Northwest Missouri and then Ferris State back to back. There's a lot to learn.
That's fun.
Well, no, I mean, there's a lot. Even if you lose twice, there's a lot to learn in those 2 weeks.
Yep,
that's pretty. Now I know I hate the concept of we're the national champion until somebody beats us. I'm more of the philosophy that once the new season starts, there is no national champion until it's settled. One at the end. You've got 3.5-4 months with no national champion. But having said that, with so many players from that team returning, they will have that experience. So that's an interesting thing to think about. All right.
I think B for all of us is probably Ferris State. With the offensive line and some of the replacements that they're going to have there, it'll be interesting to see if they are able to hit the ground going right away. They don't have Bernhardt anymore, and clearly an electric player. Gets past that first line and look out. But I think everybody's probably got Ferris still winning that game comfortably, though.
And
yeah, I do
Ferris
think it's kind of
had
interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Devin.
Oh, you got it.
I do think it's interesting to look at it from the Ferris State perspective because they have they're going to be favored in every game except maybe Grand Valley when we get there. They're going to be favored in every game, but they do have a difficult out of conference schedule. They're playing this game against Central Washington. Next week they go to North Carolina to play Lenore-Rhine, and then later on they play Findlay, who was a conference champion and a playoff team last year. So they have a really tough out-of-conference schedule. I expect them to win all those games, but it will be fun to watch them, see how they perform, see what their team looks like, how things come together heading into that GLIAC schedule. I think this is going to be one of those games that's really interesting to watch just to gauge where Ferris State's at the start of the season.
Yeah, and we saw last year with Ferris State, as I was saying, week 3 versus Saginaw Valley really struggled at times with them. To put them away kind of deal. So you could see that as well here, possibly here. It's kind of a different situation with an out-of-conference versus a conference rival kind of deal with that. But they weren't beating everybody by 50 points all year last year. They had some times where things were hit or miss early in the year with their offense. There are some mesh points that could be interesting as they try to figure that out early in the season.
And the second game on our undercard is one that Whit should primarily talk about. Minnesota State at Bemidji State.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting game in the upper Midwest because is Mankato going to, get back up to the top of the league again and immediately become, a top 5 kind of team like they've been for the better part of the last, 5-10 years. They've really been up in that mix a long time. And the challenge that they have is, they lost 3 of their last 4 games down the stretch last year at a time where I thought they would be improving with an inexperienced football team. And Bemidji's bringing back a whole lot of what they had. Now, Bemidji did lose by a few scores at Mankato last year. So it kind of brings up an interesting thought of who wins that football game. I think we probably all have Bemidji winning it. An interesting thing is that Massey, the computer rating, has Mankato winning that game on the road by a touchdown. Does anybody else have Mankato pulling that one out?
You think a lot of that has to do with that result from last year? What?
Well, I think Massey has obviously used a lot of stuff from the past. I mean, if it was involving an MIAA team, Mankato would certainly be a underdog in any of those matchups.
Probably about 3 touchdowns, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna
Cato
go.
Emporia State.
I'm gonna
20 minus
go.
20.
I'm gonna go Bemidji, and I'm really interested to see. We're kind of expecting an improved defense out of Bemidji this year. We know what their offense is going to look like. Brandon, awesome quarterback, the wide receiver, helped me out with
Bolio.
Bolio, yeah. We know what their offense is going to look like. We're expecting a little bit of an improved defense out of Bemidji, so hopefully we'll see that.
Sorry to interrupt, Chuck. With Fry coming back at running back, is there any thought with anybody that you've talked to that Bemidji might be a little different on offense and that Fry might help them control the ball just a little bit more to help out that defense? Has there been any discussion?
A little more balance.
Yeah, actually, I spoke about that a little bit in my column the other day, that I really think that Brent Bolte's a defensive-minded coach, old DC.
Okay.
Normally, DCs don't say, hey, let's pass the ball 50 times a game.
Right.
And, they were kind of forced to the air plenty last year, and it was really to their strength. So I would imagine that they're going to strive for much more balance this year and look to be much better defensively. So I wouldn't be shocked if Alt doesn't have the amount of attempts that he had last year, because of the fact that they'll be able to do more with Fry in the running game. He's coming off a pretty tough lower leg injury, so he's also going to have to see if he can be what he was before that, which was over 1,000-yard rusher in 2019.
In Super Region 1, Bentley will face Westchester. Interesting teams. I personally think Westchester will win this one. Anybody go counter to that?
I'm going to go Westchester to win this one at home, but it is hard to get the images of last year's game out of my mind. I watched the game in the season opener last year. They played at Bentley, and I don't think I'd ever seen an in-region opponent manhandle Westchester like that. I've seen a lot of Westchester football games. I've never seen a Super Region 1 team manhandle Westchester like that. So it's kind of hard to get those images out of my mind, but there's been a lot of change at Bentley. Putting a lot of faith in Bill Swan to have a rebound at Westchester, so I'm going to go with them.
Okay. Notre Dame is playing Ashland. I obviously, because I'm high on Notre Dame in terms of the season outlook, would pick them to beat Ashland. Ashland not as I feel like they're getting a little bit of the GLIAC dip. You know what happens when you leave a strong conference? You decline just a little bit. Is anybody thinking Ashland wins at home?
I think Chuck has Ashland by like 30 because he hates Notre Dame. So
I'm going to go Notre Dame in this game just because I really like their experience level and the leadership that they have. But this was an overtime game last year when they played at Notre Dame. Right. Notre Dame had a special teams touchdown, a defensive touchdown. It was a really exciting game. It went into OT, and Notre Dame won it in OT. So it wouldn't shock me to see the same kind of thing. I think Ashland might sneak up on some of the other programs in the GMAC this year. Their quarterback was out for more than half of last year. He got hurt and missed the second half of the season. He's back. The defensive player of the year in the GMAC is back on that team as well. So I think Ashland might be ready to be on the upswing a little bit.
So didn't Notre Dame don't they have a new coach now?
Yes, they do. The Mountain East was probably hit the hardest of any conference by all those coaching changes we talked about. The top 3 programs in the Mountain East all have new head coaches this year, and Notre Dame was the one that actually surprised me the most. I thought Mickey Mental would probably be there for at least a few years as a head coach.
That's what I was going to joke about. You're just learning, Mickey Mental's name, and it's like, already you have to learn new names, So
Notre Dame's coaching staff is probably one of the. I'm assuming, I'm making some guesses, but I think it's probably one of the youngest coaching staffs in Division 2. Lot of very young guys. So it'd be interesting to see how the team responds to that.
Well, if Garrett Mack's just one of, as we said, over 30 new head coaches. Let's focus again on this week though. Kaiser, they're ranked number 7 in the NAIA. They're going to play at Valdosta State.
Yeah, we got a chance to see. I was flipping around. Some of the other preview shows, and the NAIA guys were talking about this a little bit, and they're kind of talking about how Kaiser plays fast, and they're, I think, only in their 4th or 5th year as a program from down in Florida. And I know some of the coaches, obviously, at Valdosta, and they said very frankly, they said that this team would do just fine in our league. And that's a pretty nice compliment for Kaiser.
Yeah, it is.
They're obviously not saying they're going to win the league, but they're also not saying they're going to embarrass themselves.
So,
they've had quite a bit of preparation to do. So that all said, I'm still obviously thinking that all of us have Valdosta win this football game, but it's interesting to see a higher profile, higher ranked NAI coming in to play a D2 squad like this.
Sure,
for sure.
A lot of times those matchups are a good team in one level and a bad team at another level. Not very interesting at all.
Yeah, agree.
Either way, you don't learn anything, and the game wasn't interesting. So, by the way, where are they located, and how soon will they be applying for membership in the Gulf South Conference?
Wow,
they are in
Just like
Florida,
that, huh?
but it would be great to have another Florida team since we lost
would.
Florida Tech. I'm still pissed off
be.
at them about that, but
I want to
yeah.
say they're in like West Palm Beach or something like that. But yeah,
All right, let's look at
they are, Matt.
the top billing, the top 5 teams or the top 5 games of this week, and we're going. They actually have 6 listed. I'm going to decide which one will be eliminated from the pick'em. So let's. I'm going to have to do it now, guys, because I feel like we'll give away our pick'ems if we go ahead and talk about the games in depth.
I only have 5 games on my pick, and maybe you've got another one.
I only see 5 as well.
Do you?
only
Okay.
see 5.
Okay, great. All right, good. Never mind. Sorry to waste
It's that Knox
everybody's
County
time.
education right there.
No, that's the Richmond. That was the Richmond education right there.
Boy, once you have to start using 2 hands to count, it gets tough. So
The toes. I need the toes, and I had socks on. So, all right. Let's look first at Western Colorado at West Texas. So that's a great game, isn't it?
That's a tough one. And now who's keeping track of these? Be you keeping track of these?
Yeah,
So,
I write it down just like I did last year, and I'm going to pick the order, and we're going to go in order by the way clockwise, the way I see it on the screen. I'll pick this one first, just because. I'm going to go with West Texas. I always pick West Texas. You guys know that. So, all right. So, Chuck.
I'm going to go West Texas as well. Won't surprise me if this is a good ball game. There's nothing flashy about Western Colorado at all, which is why sometimes people get falling out of love with them.
Right.
I know I did a couple times last year, but I'm high on West Texas A&M, and I'm going to go with them.
Okay.
I'm going with the Buffs as well.
Whit, your turn.
Farts. Just when I thought I was going to be making a splash surprise pick, they've spoiled my fun. I'm also going with West Texas. I just think that they're going to be maybe more athletic than Western Colorado's used to seeing in the RMAC. I think that they're going to be a handful at home. Best stadium in Division II. I like them at home. Take the Buffs.
Chris, why are you taking Western Colorado?
Oh, WT. No, my issue with Western Colorado is that they can be a bit one-dimensional at times. Sure. I mean, when I watched them in the playoff game, they kind of just stick to the script. We're going to do what we need to do. We're going to run the ball first. We'll pass when we need to try to get you a little bit off balance. So, I mean, they have a formula that works really well for them, but that might be a strength versus strength game because WT's defense is definitely going to be ready for that.
Yeah. I have West Texas up on the shelf this week, making their debut. Just got that a couple days ago. So
very nice.
It has to come right down if they lose this week, though.
I understand.
I'm going to put the Austin Broadus helmet back up there.
We will have to write an open letter to Joe for that.
All right. Let's look at Finley at Ohio Dominican. Chuck, you're going to start this one.
This might be a mild upset, but I'm going to go with Ohio Dominican in this one.
Okay. Devin.
Finley.
Okay. Whit.
I think Finley is one of those kind of sneaky, dangerous teams this year. I'll take Finley in this matchup.
Okay, Ferg, what you got?
I got Finley as well, but Finley kind of plays up to the opponent sometimes, and sometimes they kind of start looking down, and so their games just get really, really interesting sometimes for no reason.
They're a fun watch at least.
It's all for the
Yeah,
entertainment value.
Right.
They understand. They understand what's up. So
They got the memo.
I was going to go with Finley as well. No doubt in my mind. All right. Let's go. Ooh, interesting. New Haven at Bowie State.
The rules
I
from
go
last
first
year
here, don't I?
dictate that I go first. That I go last. So
No. We're going to. Well, I'm gonna have to. Well, let me figure this out. Now, let's just go in order. Go ahead, Devin.
I'll take New Haven.
Okay, hold on.
Not confident about it though.
Okay.
You already know the confidence I have in New Haven already, given what we talked about with SR1.
Right.
So clearly, I'm going that direction here.
Okay.
I'm going New Haven too. Low confidence. I do think that they're the better team right now. But man, Bowie, Maryland has been where ranked teams go to die for the last couple of years. So it's a tough place to go to apparently. But I am going to go with New Haven to pull one out.
We skipped. Did we skip K-Ferg? Oh, we're just.
He wanted to go last.
You're being so nice, Chuck. That was nice of
for
you.
suspense purposes, we did that. Yes.
Okay, so you went with New Haven as well, Chuck. Is that right?
I am going to go with New Haven. Yeah.
Okay, I will go with Bowie State and K-Ferg.
I will also go with Bowie State. I just want to remind you guys that last year's game, which is going to have a lot of the same pieces on defense, they really just took it to New Haven, and they didn't need a ton of offense to win this game. So
Those are my thoughts exactly.
Yeah. If New Haven,
I don't think they're going to get a ton of offense either.
I just don't. I don't think it's going to be a very offensive game. I think it might be
First to 14 wins.
If you like offense, you might be offended. But if you like defense, this is going to be great. Bowie State.
All right.
Gone.
Okay.
Make me proud, baby. Make me proud.
CSU Pueblo is going to go to Midwestern State. We'll start. Who do we start with this time? Is it Witt?
Should be Witt.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Well, I was looking up to see if Bowie State was favored by Massey, and they're actually a 7-point favorite.
Yeah,
So
but Massey doesn't realize that they lost half their team and
you're right.
48 coaches.
I think that makes it almost a pick 'em at that point.
I agree.
That's enough. What's up?
But but Bowie will do just enough to they'll just bloody the game up enough to win. That's what they do.
Yeah,
so.
that's what they did in the playoffs last
Yeah.
year. You know, when they beat Lenore Ryan and Newberry, those games are exactly like what Ferg was just describing. So it certainly wouldn't surprise me.
All right.
The last game I think we have, Brandon, if I'm not mistaken,
We have two more. We're gonna pick the best one last. Yeah.
Yeah, you got Pueblo at Midwestern State.
Jesus,
Is that right?
Brandon's
That's
trying to take us to 6. Witt's trying to take us down to 4.
I know. Well, I was
That's his bedtime, guys.
I was called on to go first. Normally,
On
they
the
leave
first
us
show
for
of the
last,
season or
but
what?
anyway.
On average, Witt and I are correct. On average, we're correct. So,
Both wrong, but on average, you're right. I like it.
all right.
So
who
I
is-
get to go first. Is that right?
Witt, yes.
Yes.
CSU
Okay.
Pueblo at Midwestern State.
I'm not convinced that CSU Pueblo is ready to make their return to the top of the RMAC. I think this is a coin flip game, though. But I think Midwestern State's a little bit underrated athletic team. I'll take them in this one.
Okay, Ferg.
Yeah, Midwestern State got their quarterback back, and I think that is a big deal here to keep that offense going. I like Midwestern State. It's hard to go against their coach.
You know, Matt and I often talk about he's got a different perspective on this since basically you joined Division II in 2011, right? 2012.
Yeah.
Your view is about 10 years. I've got the residue of history, always affecting my opinions. And like Midwestern State has had some of the best and toughest teams over the years, and so it's hard for me not to factor that in. I'm going to pick Midwestern State, and maybe one of these days I'll learn. But that's really true.
I
about
thought you
not
were
teaching.
swerving us there for a minute, the way you introduced
No,
it.
not at all. I'm not smart enough to do that. So,
Okay.
Midwestern State. Chuck?
Yeah, I'm going to go Midwestern State too. Pueblo was picked second in the RMAC coaches poll. I know the RMAC coaches feel like they're going to be an improved team. They do bring a lot back. But they had a lot of challenges offensively last year, so I'm not sure Midwestern State is the game where they turn that around. So yeah, I'm going with Mustangs.
DA, what you got?
I got CSU Pueblo. I had them actually ranked 23rd in my initial poll. I'm pretty high on them this year. I think they get a win here on the road to start the year.
All right, very good. And then our final game of the week, one of the best games of the year.
Yes. Love
Colorado Mines at Grand Valley. And K. Ferg, you go first.
Whew, this is the interesting game. I'm going to go with Grand Valley, though. I just think that Mines is one of the this team that you kind of look at how they're structured, and you just don't think that they can hang. You think they're going to get pushed around, and they are one tough bunch. I mean, extremely tough. But Grand Valley is, I think, going to be on a mission this year. And it's going to be really hard to stop them, and I just don't think that Mines is going to have enough to do it.
You know, I cannot recall, and I'm going to pick Grand Valley, and here's why. I can't recall a time when Mines will have played in an atmosphere like they're going to play in for the first time. You know, to start a season or even in the playoffs. You know, the secret that nobody tells you about Division II is that many times the playoff games have a much, much less festive, active, intense atmosphere. Not the play itself. The play itself can be really good, but everything surrounding it can be lackluster compared to the regular season because of
especially
rules.
on Thanksgiving.
Yes, because of many different factors.
A lot of factors, yeah.
Well, Grand Valley is going to have 500,000 people in that stadium to start the season. And in their opening game, and it will be, and I'm not saying that the crowd's going to beat Colorado Mines, but when you're taking two teams that are pretty equal and giving Grand Valley the home field advantage in addition to that home field advantage, and I think it swings the game to the Lakers, and that's who I'm picking.
Although I would say Mines' atmosphere was actually pretty good in there, but the issue is this is a road game for them,
right?
So they have the benefit of home field advantage too,
right? And this is going to be 15,000 good at Allendale, so all rooting for the Lakers. It's not split either, you know.
Right.
I can pretty much just parrot everything you said, Brandon. I'm going with Grand Valley as well, and I am very high on Colorado Mines this year coming into the season. I'm very, very high on them. Like I said, I had them ranked in my top 5. I actually have them ranked number 2 ahead of Grand Valley. But in this matchup, I do think Grand Valley wins, and it's really for all the same reasons that you mentioned.
Devin.
Yeah, so Mine's going to go 2 time zones over. And playing Grand Valley State, as you guys said, is a tough place to play on there. Not many people outside of Ferris go into Grand Valley and win. With it, I think Mines can make a statement even with a loss here if they keep it really competitive and can bring it down to the wire. I think I'll get even more respect for Mines if they do that kind of deal. But I'm taking Grand Valley and the Lakers here. They're just a little better.
Yep.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt it'll be competitive. Yep. I mean, does anybody doubt that at all?
Well, we thought Pueblo
I don't think
would play with them at the start of last year, and it wasn't like that.
Well, that's true too. But that, I mean,
I think Mines is a better team than Pueblo.
There were a lot more questions about
top
Pueblo
teams in the
year
RMAC coming is what I was kind of getting at.
Yeah, I know, but there were so many questions with Pueblo last year, and those were coming in a year they had trouble scoring the year before.
Agreed.
And then they had a new quarterback again last year, I believe. And so there were so many more questions. I mean, there are only answers in Golden. I mean, there are no questions. And so that's if this game were in Golden, I would pick Colorado Mines. But again, I'm picking Grand Valley. Sorry. Keep going, guys.
I think I would too. But that said, I underestimated Mines throughout the second half of last season. Almost week in and week out, I underestimated them. So if they win, if they go to Grand Valley and they win that game, next Sunday night on the show, I will wear my Colorado School of Mines t-shirt on the show to rep the Orediggers.
And Ferg
I will buy a shirt. I will buy a shirt and wear it.
Can someone give me an Orediggers hat if they win?
Ferg, you gonna shave your beard?
No, I'm not doing that. You take it too far.
Not
you know, there's only one reason why I would shave my beard. Okay,
I'm in for those.
In week 2, if Virginia Union beats Valdosta State, I will shave my beard.
Oh my God!
The beard is safe.
We've got
right.
that on tape. That we played. Yes.
Devin, you picked Grand Valley. Is that correct? Or Mines?
Yes.
Grand
yeah,
Valley.
Grand Valley.
Okay. Whit, have you made a selection yet?
Well, after all this hooey about Grand Valley in the chat and all this lead up that you had, Brandon, about, you know, they're trying to storm the beach at Normandy and all this stuff about how difficult it's going to be. You know, I had it all on the paper here, but we're throwing that out the window.
I love it.
The window was open. And Matoka and company are going to go in there and they are going to beat the Grand Valleys. And I'm going on a limb, and that's where we're at.
All right, very good. Fun.
I don't think it's that big of a limb. I mean, like I said, I'm really high on Colorado Mines. I'm not going to be shocked if they win.
And I looked at the schedule. I wasn't for sure of the kickoff time. It's also a 7 p.m. game. And I mean, I didn't realize it was on a Thursday, not on a Saturday. So it's going to be a night game. That's going to be even, you know, that place is going to be fun.
Now, that's not going to be on anything accessible like the U or any of that stuff, right?
No.
Okay.
I believe the GLIAC is on
Flow,
a pay service platform. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yep. All right.
Just like the MIAA.
All right, guys. Let's go ahead and look to see if there are any comments that we need to address. There are tons of comments. You guys need to talk about random things.
Tony took care of all the questions in the chat. We can just bail.
Did he? All right. Thanks, Tony. We'll see you later. Have a good night, guys. All right. Tony should have came in. It should have been with us. So, all right. Let's answer this one, K. Ferg.
Given that all that's transpired in the offseason with the coaches and players leaving, could this be the year that Bowie State declines? If so, which team in the CRAA is likely to become the new top dog? The problem with this is that Bowie State has relied on transfers to some degree, and they certainly have some options in coming in from the transfer portal. So, do I think that they will decline? Yeah, I mean, it's CRAA doesn't normally have the level of success that it did last year. But
even the same team might have had difficulty repeating the type, right. You know, how far they got in the playoffs. That was the first trip. What was it? Quarterfinals, right?
Yeah, it was the first trip to the quarterfinals, and I mean, even like the year that Amir Hall and Bowie State went in 2017 to the playoffs, they had to get to 18, then 19, they dropped back down, and they made the playoffs, but they couldn't sustain and get a playoff win that year. So, I mean, do I think that they going to have some declines? Yeah, of course. Do I think that they'll still be in the running for the divisional title? Yes. Do I think that Fayetteville State or anybody in the CIAA South will beat them? I'm still not feeling it. Ask me after next week when Fayetteville State and Pembroke plays, because I think if Fayetteville State can beat Pembroke, I think there's some hope at that point.
All right.
Can I mention Pembroke, for example, real quick, because before I go to this question, because actually one of the most recent questions just came in about the Mountain East. Somebody asked about, with all the coaching changes there, who could potentially jump up and maybe challenge the establishment. I think UNC Pembroke is a team I'm really interested in keeping an eye on in the Mountain East. They've had a lot of good stability there. Second year in the conference, I think that they could be a team to watch for.
But Pembroke just lost their quarterback, Josh Jones. I think he's finally done eligibility-wise. And just looking at their roster, it's a very young roster. And Pembroke struggles in that scenario. I mean, it takes them a couple of games just to figure out who the quarterback's going to be in that deal.
Historically, yeah, that's been a challenge for them.
Yeah, so I don't know if Pembroke's really ready for that, and I think that's why I'm really that's a game I'm going to go to for sure, because that's going to be at Fayetteville State to see how both of them play.
Right, Whit, can you read this question? And if so, do you want to handle it?
Well, I just took off my glasses, to be honest with you. So
okay, I'll read it. I'll read it for you.
I can respond back to it though.
No, I won't Whit because it's addressing him. So
have to read it anyway.
What's that?
Is that what John called me out? Anyway. John called me out in the chat, didn't he, or something?
Yeah. Whit is underrating the fact
that he can take a flying leap, but okay.
So Whit is underrating the fact that both Northwest quarterbacks were hurt last year. Their offense will be fine in the regular season until they have to face Grand Valley or Ferris.
I was actually just emphasizing how much their offense went through Al McKellar, actually. I didn't think that they were I thought they got okay production at the quarterback spot, but I didn't think that they were the kind of team that was looking to put too much on their quarterback and in the style of play they had. So I wasn't really underestimating him. I was just kind of speaking to the giant who's not there, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to kind of bounce off that, so Al McKellar's gone. Your top 3 receivers from last year are all gone, including Caden Davis, who had a camp invite for the Denver Broncos, Don Adell, who's their deep threat, and Tatum, who is their slot guy, kind of possession receiver. Tanner Owen was their left tackle. He's with the Bills right now, trying to make their roster. So there's a lot of talent on that offense that left. And you still, I understand Northwest has 2 quarterbacks who most colleges would love. I still don't love the 2 quarterback system if it's not done as a passer and then like a change of pace guy. If it's just 2 guys running the same system, it's not. I don't like that as much on there. I would prefer Hohensee for Northwest over Braden Wright. I know there's others who think otherwise there as well. So if Hohensee can stay healthy, I think they have guys who are young in the wings at receiver who can do enough. The running back room, as Whit said, is still a question mark. So the offense for Northwest is still a massive question mark going into the season. With that, their defense is going to be fine. With Rich Wright, it's always going to be really good. Can that offense do enough to keep the defense from playing 35 minutes a game? Is where I'm at with them.
Agree.
Interesting comment by Clee. He was talking about Malik Mitchell, that he's not really the running threat that Ferris usually has at quarterback.
Didn't he run over Northwest?
About to ask the Bearcats about that. Yeah.
Did he have a lot of yards in that game?
He killed Northwest on the ground. They couldn't stop their option with him running it. He's a stud too.
Even if he's not there, or even if he doesn't run, Evan Cummins is back, and he's like big physical runner. Like really good.
They'll be fine.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly what he looks like. All right. Still looking through this. Guys, address this while I look for more.
I don't think any of it.
One player.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it
Adam
one?
Seiler. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We know that they were really, really high on all the guys that were on the depth chart last year, though. And just looking at them warm up, we know that the size is there. So.
And I think they rotated their line decently well last year too. You got the backups plenty of playing time.
Yeah, the only concern I would have with Ferris in the quarterback spot is with the way they play their quarterback, they put them at great risk of potentially getting injured because they're not afraid to have them carry the ball very frequently. If Mitchell goes down, Cummins isn't the same type of player in terms of agility necessarily that they had with the other guys. So I'm not sure if I would look at him quite the same as I have these last 2 seasons.
All right. Still looking for comments, man. There's some great conversation in the chat room tonight. Actual analysis and intelligent conversation. Much better than we actually had on the show. So
I was about to say, am I better than the show's conversation?
Congratulations to you all.
I'm sure it took less time.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. So
all I saw on the Facebook was MIAA and GLIAC people arguing about out of conference scheduling. So we've already addressed that, but that was a lot on the Facebook side of it.
Yeah, we're on the side of playing more conference games, or more non-conference games. So Tony Nicolette believes that he thought Ashland would pull the UIndy and dominate for several years, and he raised the eyebrow at the results last year. Again, you guys said quarterback was hurt last year for half the season. Is that right?
Yeah, he got hurt and missed half the season. But I agree with this. I thought Ashland, you threw that out, Brandon, that they were escaping Grand Valley and Ferris and all that, and they moved into the GMAC. I had the same thought. I thought that they would own that conferce, and that just hasn't been the case.
Long? For how long? Did you have it? Is there a
5
timeline
years
on
at
it?
least?
Okay.
At least in the immediate when they moved over there, maybe not the first year because it's all new teams, but just knowing, I saw Ashland quite a few times in that 2008 to 15 timeline. I saw them a handful of times. Usually had a very talented roster. I just thought that they would be. I thought that they would be a little bit better and have a lot more success in the GMAC than they've had so far.
Lots of complaining I see about people leaving the GLIAC. I understand. I'm not seeing any more questions. Let's look at this one. I think that's the easy answer, though. I mean, do we have a preseason pick?
Sure, you got to look at Bajent.
Right. Yeah.
The biggest problem that he has is competing against himself from a year ago. But we've had repeat Harlan Hill winners before. It's
Wait,
it
Danny
is
Woodhead's not the
possible to
favorite
do it.
this year?
It's certainly possible to repeat as a Harlan Hill Trophy winner. I'll give you a couple names though. Chris Brim, quarterback at Notre Dame, exceptional player. Really like him. I think somebody who's really under the radar is Harrison Frost, the quarterback at West Georgia. I don't know that he'll have the numbers, but he did have a UWG single season passing record a year ago, so he might. And then, of course, Ivory Durham.
I was going to say, what happens if Valdosta plays defense this year and gets the ball back to the offense in a more expedited fashion? I mean, what will he do? We talked about it in the fantasy draft, or at least I proposed that. Maybe it gets him out of the game early. I don't know. It could be a negative that they're because the defense plays well, they get up and you're out of the game early. But
what about?
I think Brandon names like Toriano Clinton. I think if UIndy is, does work on their schedule and has a strong season, makes the playoffs, he's going to have some nice stats. And then kind of the guy that I thought didn't maybe get enough love at the end of last year, Danny Kittner. At wideout. If he can put up another monster year, I mean, what statistically more can he do at that point?
Yeah. Thanks, Whit. I was going to say, what about some non-quarterback names? So those are two really good ones.
I'm always one step ahead of the game, Chuck.
So I'm going to go back to quarterback though. TJ Davis at Nebraska Kearney. If they can, Northwest is right for the taking there. They got Northwest at home this year. It's the homecoming for the Lopers. If you can have a big game versus Northwest and put up better passing numbers this year along with his running, he could be a player as well to look out for to possibly sneak in that competition again.
All right.
I was going to throw out Dwayne McGee at Lenore Ryan.
Yep.
Interesting.
As a possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, as somebody who can do it. I mean, I'm kind of tempted to look at Jordan Terrell at Barton, but the problem there is, he's not going to get a lot of looks because Barton is probably not going to be quite at the top of the SAC. And I also am wondering if there's going to be a sophomore slump or not. Is it going to be more like Jaleel McLaughlin where he continues to churn out the yards, or is he going to take a bit of a dive?
So I always believe
also, I think Barton
ahead,
is going to have a little bit of a deeper roster. Most of their offense went through Jordan Terrell last year. I think that they're actually going to be a better offense with less production from him this year.
More well-rounded.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think that will be basically, I think we covered everything we needed to for week one. A couple of reminders. The Elite 100 watch list will come out tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. If you haven't watched our previewing the top 25 teams, the numbers now, but we go into detail about each team, and obviously we would like for you to watch that. Every week we ask you to subscribe, and we'd appreciate that. For some reason, it's better for us if we have more subscribers and all that good stuff. So any other comments before we leave, guys? Or are we ready to go?
The last thing I'll say is don't forget that there are 2 games on Sunday this week. We have D2 football Thursday, Saturday, and is it 2 games on Sunday?
We have at least one.
I think there's 2.
And SIAC.
There are 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
D2 football on Sunday.
All right.
I would just like to give a shout out that we did also record the fantasy football draft this year.
There it is.
It's a good watch if you're interested to see some of the individuals that we've talked about today. Go Jalen Fry.
Okay, Kiefer. Besides yourself, who's the best team that you've seen in the fantasy thing?
Don't feed it.
Oh gosh, you know what? I hate to say this, but the commissioner, Kyle, has a pretty strong team, and he won last year. And his ego is like it won't even fit through the door anymore. My God,
that's hilarious. All right, guys. Well, that will do it for this week. Remember to do all those things for us, and we appreciate you watching. And,
read the columns,
and we will. We have that's true. No, it's true.
Yeah,
we have tons.
Absolutely.
We have tons of guys churning out lots of stuff right now. So read that. But until then, we will see you next week. Let's have a great, fun week of D2 football ahead of us.